Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, it's a real pleasure to be here today with you. Maybe before we start, a quick introduction. Ilkka, Huotelin, and myself are both the co-founders of Be Customer Smarts. Ilkka brings more than 15 years of experience in IT, data, and AI. He has worked for companies such as Nokia in R&D, Ericsson, and Comtel. And myself, I come from the luxury hospitality industry, where I've worked for over a decade for the Ritz-Carlton hotel company. The presentation today shouldn't take longer than 25 to 30 minutes. We really wanted to make sure there was enough time and room for Q&A and to engage in a meaningful conversation. So feel free to shoot your questions as we go throughout the presentation, and Ilkka and I will try our best to get to everything. If not, towards the end of the presentation, we also have a QR code you can scan, and then we can connect on LinkedIn and answer any questions that left unanswered. Perfect. So we're very happy to be able to have the opportunity to share the room with you today. We are also very happy to see the attendance that we have today, which really supports our statement that today we are confident that the majority of industries and companies understand the value of customer experience as a differentiator and also as a growth mechanism. But what the majority of those companies do not understand is the relationship between the experience they offer or aim to offer and how this impacts their business outcomes. So today what we would like to do is discuss a bit more into detail how we can build that link and build that relationship between the experience you offer and how this impacts your customer and your business ultimately. One of the main reasons of this limitation is that the majority of the companies use voice of customer as the sole data source for inputs. Don't get me wrong, Ilkka and I are big fans of voice of customer. We believe it's absolutely critical to understanding your customer base. But unfortunately, only relying on that one data input is not going to give you the clarity that you need to understand what matters the most to your customer on one hand, and ultimately, how is this impacting specific target variables, which could be NPS, OSAT, churn, retention, and so on and so forth, right? In addition to that, what we've learned over time is that I believe that there is a little bit of delay with my slides. My sincerest apologies. I will stop sharing and share one more time. Perfect. Did the slide just move right now? Yes, it did. Did it?
Yes, now we see the full.
Perfect. It got a bit stuck. My sincerest apologies. So I was just talking about voice of customer. Some of the limitations that we encounter, working with our customers is that looking at voice of customer, you depend very much on the willingness of the customer to answer. And they speak about a little bit of fatigue. Certainly when we talk about surveys, and this is one of the reasons why we believe that the response rate is more on the lower hand, right? In addition to that, some of the responses oftentimes can be biased, incomplete. So using only that as a source of data to understand your customer doesn't feel right, in our opinion. Adding to that oftentimes the responses are lagging, right? The customer departed, the experience is negative, has been experienced by the customer, then he shares his feedback. So unfortunately, we do not have the opportunity to resolve it before the customer has to go through that negative experience. So there is a few things that we obviously, like we said, right, we are big fans of voice of customer, but there is a few limitations to its approach. On a very, very positive note, one of the things that we were not very happy about was that it was not action driven enough. It gives you insights, sometimes sentiment analysis, it looks at verbatims, categorization, but it wasn't enough action driven. But on that, things are changing. I would like to also recognize Zenloop, which is one of the key players in that area, and also thank them for the opportunity to be here and talk with you today. So this is where we are today. We've made tremendous progress. We're riding the wave of action-based customer experience, but as you can see, the horizon is still a long way ahead. And adding to this, that the expectations of the customers and the expectations of internal stakeholders, keep on increasing over time. So the question is, what is the next step in our customer experience journey? And we believe that the next step is understanding how those actions that you will take will ultimately impact your customer and also your business. So what we'd like to do now is share a few use cases that we have done to illustrate this approach, and then obviously explain to you how and which steps you can follow in order for you to implement this in your respective companies. I will now leave the word to Ilkka. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Yannick, and welcome to everybody also on my behalf. So as we've been hearing this morning, and also this great presentation from Zenloop, that customer experience is going from statistical analysis to action-based, and we want also to take it further to be business impact focused. So like understanding how your customer experience and which part of the experience impacts your business outcomes. And so what I will show now is two case studies. So like how different companies have done this, and then I'll go through steps at how you can also do it in your company. So what we believe is that voice of customer data is a great source of insights, but when you complement it with additional data sources, you can link the outcomes to sort of the experience to the business outcomes. And all companies have a lot of data on their customers and their customer interactions. So it can be CRM data about the customer profile, their demographics, their segment, but then there's also usage data, also what customers have bought, their browsing data. So like the previous example was about this website performance. So, there's a lot of log files on that, and we can link it to the individual customer. There's the feedback data, log files, complaints, all possible data in a company. And a lot of people might say, well, yeah, it is interesting, but we don't have all the data in one place. And our argument is that you don't need to. So what you can do is get started what you have today, and not to wait a few years to build a perfect data warehouse or data lake where everything's neatly arranged. So what we're saying is that most companies what we have dealt with have sufficient amount of data to do this analysis what we have, and you can complement that data as you go, because then you realize where are the gaps. So let me share now two examples. So the first one is a hotel. So this is a sort of luxury hotel in a big European business center. And their challenge was that out of 10 first-time visitors, so customers who came first time to this hotel, only 3 came ever back. So 7 out of 10 didn't come. And the hotel wanted to understand what is wrong in the experience they are providing, but why so few people come back. And they have been looking at feedback, and that gave some understanding, but feedback was often unclear. So what they did with our help is that looking at different kind of customer KPIs and attributing those to the sort of likelihood to customers to come back, they were able to find out what were the sort of the key reasons why customers didn't come back. So this is just a summary of the results. So the top reason was room not ready, and so in this hotel's case, so like if the customers came before the check-in time or sometimes even after that, and the room was not ready immediately, on average they had to wait 43 minutes, and this delay caused the satisfaction measured in NPS score down by 3.4 points, but it also caused loss of revenue about 2 million euros because these customers didn't come back. So with using the operational data, the hotel was able to attribute. So if you go back one more slide, yeah, thanks. so they were going to attribute that what were the main causes and how much the customers they lose and how much those customers would have brought them. So the first two are operational KPI, like room not ready and whether room upgrade was given. And the third one was based on survey data, the room cleanliness. So these were the sort of main drivers. And now we can go to the next slide. So after the hotel had done this exercise, using the data that they already have, they were able to do internal improvements on their processes and improve the experience. So they were able to remove the root causes, and the result was that now 4 out of 10 customers return. So that's 33% improvement in retention. So if you go to the next slide, so the second example I wanted to share with you is a bank. So they are focused very much on their premium customers because those bring the highest profitability. But the bank was not 100% clear what impacts the satisfaction of these premium customers. So we can go to the next slide. So similar like in the hotel case, so the whole bank had a lot of data log files of the customer interactions. So, was the issue result in the first call? How many times customer had to contact? What was average waiting time? If they applied for mortgage, how many days did it take to decide and so on. So we took the data that bank had and built an AI model to see like how much of each of these customer experience KPIs impact the satisfaction. And we could see like on the bottom there are different these KPIs. So these are the customer experience KPIs. So for instance, on the left there's this KPI 23, which I think is the time to decision. If there was a mortgage or loan application and so on. We can see that brought down the NPS by 0.29 points. And then, so these are the orange ones on the left. And then the blue ones on the right, those are the KPIs that the bank provided good service. So the customers were delighted. So this brought up the NPS. So with this, the bank can see what are the main things to focus on and what is the most impactful. So this is at the current average levels. But if you look at the next slide, so this is time to decision for the mortgage. So on the bottom, you can see time to decision in days, the scale from 0 to 20. And on the vertical axis, you have the green, which is green bars, which are the NPS impact, and the black line, which is the revenue impact. So you can see that if the time to decision was 0 days, the NPS would go up 5 points, and the revenue impact would be positive over 1 million. And then on the other hand, if it takes 20 days, the NPS goes down 5 points, and the revenue impact is roughly about 2 million euros that they lose. So this is, you can select using the data that they have, they were able to pinpoint, what is the optimal target that they should, because all the improvements cost money. So, to shorten the time, they need more people. So it's like understanding the benefit of the investment, they could do a business case on this improvement. So this is when we look at one KPI, but go to the next one. So, but it's when you look at all those KPIs together, you see what is the potential negative or positive impact, so you can prioritize. So here we have the time to decision, what was shown in previous slide, is on the bottom left corner. And what you can see, for instance, that so on the top right corner, there's this number of contacts required to resolve the issue. So, like, how many times did the customer have to contact a bank? And you can see that here the revenue impact negative, but if customer had to contact many times, so like 8 times on the top right, the revenue impact it's about 3 million. So you can see that if a bank doesn't get this right, they can lose much more money than on the other KPIs. But this is sort of like a hygiene factor. But if you get it right, the revenue impact is not so much positive, but the NPS impact is. So this gives you sort of like where does it hurt most? What is the business impact, and where you can gain most? So you can focus your limited resources on most important things. And on the next slide, which we already saw a little bit, is that after the bank did these changes, based on the analysis that we provided them, the NPS for these premium banking customers have gone up by 1.8 points.
And if I can add here also, from a customer standpoint, their feedback, the key learnings they shared with us was having clarity, removing the guessing work, because oftentimes, we use hypotheses or we look at internal capabilities when we decide to focus on a specific service improvement. But in this case, it was based on the impact it would have on their customers and on the business. So it gave them a lot of clarity, it removed the guessing work, and it allowed them to understand where to prioritize their scarce resources. Because like Ilkka said very well, we don't have indefinite resources. So it is important to understand how to manage them and to know what the return will be. And specifically for the hotel case, and this obviously speaks to me as I come from that industry, and I'm sure you know this quite well. From a staffing perspective, it's the industry that is, or if the most, or one of the most industries that are suffering because of the staffing shortages. So what they also told me is that they were able to use this approach to also understand how to better schedule. And schedule not based on, again, internal capability, but saying, well, if we do not have the right staffing here, the impact or the negative impact in that case on NPS or in revenues will be exponentially higher. So it also helped them with their scheduling approach, and it also helped them improve their productivity, which I think is indeed quite nice.
Good. So how then you can do this in your company? So here we listed a few steps, sort of concretely how to get started and what the results you can get. So as always, it's important to decide what is the business need that you are addressing. So like I think in the previous presentation, we were talking about a good question. And so what is that you're trying to analyze and optimize? So is it like in the hotel's case, the question was, why didn't the customers come back? In the bank's case, what is important for the premium banking customers' satisfaction? So being very clear on the question is very important. And once you sort of accrete internally the question you are optimizing, then what we recommend is that you go through the customer journey from the customer point of view and look at the different interactions that the customer has with your company, your product, website, and identify the data that you have. And here it often requires a little bit of work looking at, like call center has probably their own log files. If you're talking about insurance company, they have files on the claims processing, for instance. So like when does the claim send and so on. So this information is there in different places, but here it's important that you create those KPIs from a customer point of view, because from a customer experience point of view, it doesn't matter which department was handling it for how many days. So, if it's 2 days in department A and 3 days in department B, customer sees 5 days. So turning those internal data points into customer. And so looking at the whole journey, different touch points, and creating customer KPIs, and looking at then the journey also from point of view, like let's say, like if looking at the support, there might be different sub-journeys. So those customers who had to call their support, they probably had a problem earlier. So understanding those problems, and then another sub-journey for those who didn't need to call the call center, that they didn't have issues, or they managed to resolve, maybe finding answer on the website. So collecting that data, and like I said earlier, I would bet that most companies have that data, enough data to do something. And no company has perfect data. So it's important to get started with what you have today. And then the next step is analyze the relationship between those KPIs that you defined in step 2 with the business objective. And here I'll show you 2 ways to do it. So the first thing, which is easy to do, and you can do it in company quite easily, is looking at correlations between those KPIs and the business outcome, like the churn rate, ARPU increase, or satisfaction. So you can see, does the input KPI have any correlation, either positive or negative, on that? So is there any link between the input and the output? But here it's important to understand that correlation doesn't automatically make causation. So that's why it's important to understand the journey and the sequence of the step. So like people don't want, for instance, to call the call center. Having good service in the support is nice, but it's looking at first that why did people have to call. So looking at those the different kind of variables and their sequence. So this is good way to get started, but also it's important to realize that often many of these KPIs tell about the same thing. So they are different aspects to most the same thing. So correlation doesn't yet tell the root cause necessarily. So it ignores correlations and dependencies between the KPIs. And if you have a lot of data and a lot of KPIs, it can be also laborious. So, but this is definitely a good way to get started. So then the next step, is to use an AI-based attribution model. So there are tools available which can calculate how much each KPI impacts the business outcome. So they can attribute that call waiting time had this much impact. First call resolution this much, and so on. So like those examples that I showed earlier, they were based on that. So it gives you much more detailed insights, and you can look at it that's like the whole customer base level, segment or persona level, and individual customer level. So, and you can look at it in monetary value. And the benefit of this tool is, it's automated. So you don't need to do thing. Like in the first thing is that it's good that you just need an Excel sheet. The second thing, you either need to have skills insight or to use one of the tools. So next step, once you understood those relationships, so like what is causing dissatisfaction and so on, then what you need to do is find the root causes, because just knowing something doesn't change anything in a customer's eyes. So for the customers to see any change, you need to identify why, for instance, rooms are not ready when the guests arrive to the hotel, and then transform those processes. And once you implemented that change, then finally you should measure the impact. And as many speakers spoke this morning, this is not sort of like one thing, but you have one silver bullet. So this is a continuous process. And so because what we recommend you is that you fix the top issues, and then once those are improved, then you move to the next ones and keep improving. Because if you stand still, your customer expectations will increase, and your competitors will bypass you. So this is sort of like not a project, but a sort of continuous way of working. I think this is like the speaker from Hilti mentioned earlier. So this is sort of our guidance how to link using operational data, you can link the experience with the business outcomes.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure if there is any questions or comments. We're going to go to that section right now. I will just keep this up for a few seconds in case you're interested to engage in the conversation, have any questions, any comments, any feedback. In addition to the software that we're using here with the conference and Jubilo, happy to connect with you on an individual level and continue the conversation. But thank you so much for your attention and looking forward to answering any question you might have.
So Maya, are there any questions from the audience yet?
No questions yet. So please feel free to use the Q&A feature there. So I think we have a couple of minutes time to wait. So let's see if there's something coming up.
Yeah. So while we wait for the audience to type in all the questions, so Yannick, because you worked in the luxury travel industry where it's very much sort of person to person already. So what would you say to the comments? If somebody says, well, we want to be people oriented, using data and AI is not, we don't feel it's the right way for our industry. So.
Yeah, this is something I hear often. I just finished my MBA. I did a lot of research for my thesis where I spoke to over 150 customer experience professionals across industries. And oftentimes when we talk about data, and definitely at the level that we are talking about it today, we often hear, yes, but is experience or service ultimately not human? And that's absolutely correct. I come from the Ritz-Carlton. If there was one place where they speak about genuine care, where they speak about building emotional relationships, it's that place, right? So this is something that we very much believe in. But I also believe in giving the tools, the knowledge, and the information needed to the teams in order to be able to make that impact on the customer, right? And that is something that I believe is unfortunately still missing today. Some of the examples I shared earlier come also from my experience with Ritz-Carlton. We've spent a lot of resources, time and energy trying to figure out what should we improve? Is it check-in experience? Is it F&B? And ultimately we spent, let me tell you this, a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of human capital, which they do not have today, on something that ultimately was not yielding the result or the impact that we were looking for, right? So it's not about taking away the human. No, it's enabling the human, enabling companies through those insights to make better decisions and to be able to transform their customer experience. That's really, what we're preaching here and what we're trying to do.
Yeah, thanks, Yannick.
And related to that, we actually do have a question here.
Great.
So many potential data points. Where to start?
Yeah, so I think it's so like, first of all, understand the question. So, then if you have data points, then look at you can take a little bit lazy approach. So like, what is the easiest, what you have readily available, and do it as like iteration. So like add data and then, see what insights you can get, then see if you can add more. So like, I'm myself a perfectionist, so I like to get all the data, and as a data guy, my answer is get all the data that you can, but you have to be also practical. So like, what is available and what you can link to the customer experience.